And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
Well, we're slowly, many would say too slowly, starting to get back to normal. And what happens? China is at it again, this time with Hong Kong, passing legislation that essentially bypasses the Hong Kong legislature and sets up a real threat to the one-party, two-system program that they've had in place, which allowed the people of Hong Kong a lot of freedoms that the rest of the Chinese don't enjoy under the communist regime there. That leads us to believe that we ought to be asking a lot of questions of China, not the least of which is whether our one China policy is really the best for all concerned. Taiwan really should be given another look at this point. And we have to take a serious look at supply chains in particular, but our overdependence upon the Communist Chinese Party and its government. It's played out throughout this pandemic situation and looks to be a problem down the road as well. Look what it did to the markets this week. The day after the move by the Chinese, the first time all week, we have a downturn in the markets, most notably on President Trump's announcement that he's going to talk about China. Went from a 200 plus to 150 minus, but the good news is the markets are alive. The Dow over 25,000 this week, the Nasdaq back to flirting with 10,000, and all indicators pointing up, despite the fact that we have 30 million people unemployed right now, all of which is a real problem down the road, as is the liquidity that has been created both by the Fed and by the congressional actions during the pandemic. That can't be taken back. So we're looking at a prospect of potential inflation in 2021, and additionally, dealing with all those people that have been placed out of work by the pandemic and these lockdowns and shutdowns. And shouldn't we all now be asking whether or not the lockdown/shutdown approach was truly the best, or was it in fact a mistake? And as things begin to move back to normal, Joe Biden emerges from his basement to talk about race relations. And he says, if you support Trump, you ain't really black. That, of course, made media headlines, and folks are talking about that, as they should be, all over the place. But if you get a chance, watch the rest of that interview. I mean, it really has become very disturbing to listen to Joe Biden speak at any length. It is a word salad made with 5-week-old lettuce. It really has gotten to be very, very troubling for anybody that's paying any attention. Unfortunately, what got the headline was his intemperate remark, which overlooked the rest of the story, something that you might want to take a look at. And this week, an awful lot of conversation about where we all go from here with respect to nominating the candidates of the respective parties. The Democrats have already moved their convention time-wise, and they're talking now about moving it all together to a virtual convention. There are some legal questions in that regard. And the Republicans now are wondering whether or not they're actually going to go to Charlotte, because the governor of North Carolina, a blue state governor in a relatively red state, isn't saying that for certain they'll be able to actually hold the convention in Charlotte this summer. The Republicans are going to hold theirs. They've been pretty clear about that, and they may actually go to Georgia, Florida, or someplace else, which would be a little bit of devastation to the economy of North Carolina at a time when nobody can really afford hits to the economy because we've shut it down for so long. And as I previously said, you watch, we're going to be asking a lot of questions about that. And finally, the space launch, an historic one, scrubbed this week, probably going to happen today if the weather holds up, if not Sunday or Monday, where SpaceX and NASA have teamed up to send up a shuttle crew for the first time in a decade. They're actually going to meet up with the folks at the International Space Station along the way. It's truly amazing. And as you think about the discovery of space and opening it up and the history that the U.S. has had there, who was the last person to walk on the moon? A name that very few of us remember, but Gene Cernan, almost 50 years ago, in December of 1972, set foot off of the moon back into the lunar landing module for the last time. That's the history of the U.S. in space. We got there first. We did a great job. And would you please take a minute to like, share, subscribe, or whatever this week's bit. Share it with your friends, because we want them to also have the best 60-ish seconds of your week.